Right now, you can start a video call with someone on the other side of the planet in about 3 seconds. That fact is so normal to us that it barely registers. But it took nearly 80 years, thousands of researchers, a Cold War, and a few stubborn geniuses to make that 3 seconds possible. This is the story of how the internet was built, and how it quietly rewired the way humans talk to each other. The idea actually predates the internet itself by decades. In 1945, an engineer named Vannevar Bush wrote an essay imagining a machine that could store and instantly link vast amounts of human knowledge, connecting one idea to another the way our own minds do. The technology to build it did not exist yet, but the dream of a connected web of information was already on paper before most people alive had ever seen a computer. By 1962, a researcher named J.C.R. Licklider was describing something he called a galactic network, a vision of computers around the world connected well enough that people could access programs and data from any site, from anywhere. It sounded like science fiction. It was, more or less, a description of the internet you are using to watch this video. The internet did not start as a way to watch videos or send messages. It started as a defense problem. Researchers worried that the country's phone network was dangerously fragile, built around single points of failure that an enemy could knock out in one strike. A researcher named Paul Baran proposed something radical. Break information into small chunks, send those chunks across many different paths at once, and reassemble them at the destination. Around the same time, a British researcher named Donald Davies arrived at a nearly identical idea independently and gave it the name we still use today, packet switching. That single idea, that data didn't need one fixed path to get where it was going, is the seed everything else grew from. In 1969, a team at UCLA tried to send the very first message over what was called ARPANET, the internet's earliest ancestor, to a research group at Stanford. The word they were typing was simple: login. They typed the L, it arrived. They typed the O, it arrived. They typed the G, and the entire system crashed. The first message ever sent over what would become the internet was, appropriately, just 2 letters, L and O. It's a funny footnote, but it's also a reminder that every world-changing technology starts out breaking constantly before it starts working reliably. 2 years later, in 1971, an engineer named Ray Tomlinson sent the first message between 2 separate computers using a program he had written himself, and along the way, picked the @ symbol to separate a person's name from their machine, mostly because it was a character that was not being used for anything else. That small, almost accidental choice became the shape of every email address ever written since. Here's a piece of this story with genuine North Carolina roots. In 1979, 2 graduate students, Tom Truscott and Jim Ellis, connected Duke University and the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, using a simple dial-up link, creating what became Usenet, one of the earliest large-scale networks for sharing messages between universities. Long before anyone said the word internet in casual conversation, 2 campuses, less than 15 miles apart in the Piedmont, were already experimenting with exactly what this technology would become. Through the 1970s, dozens of separate, incompatible networks popped up across universities and research labs. The breakthrough that tied them together came from 2 researchers, Vint Cerf and Bob Kahn, who published a design in 1974 for a common language every network could speak, no matter how it was built. That language became TCP and IP, the 2 protocols still carrying essentially all internet traffic today, including, quite literally, the call you make on a modern office phone system. By 1990, the government-funded backbone that had carried this traffic for 2 decades stepped aside, and commercial providers took over. The internet was no longer a research project. It was becoming infrastructure. In 1989 and 1990, a researcher at CERN in Switzerland named Tim Berners-Lee built something layered on top of this infrastructure, a system of linked documents anyone could navigate with a click. He called it the World Wide Web. Within a few years, ordinary people, not just researchers, were logging on, and by the mid-1990s, the dot-com boom was in full swing, with a wave of new companies racing to stake a claim on this new medium. But for most of the 1990s, the internet still mostly carried text and images. Voice was a separate world, still running over old copper telephone lines. That started changing in the early 2000s as fiber optic cable and rapidly increasing bandwidth made it possible to send actual phone calls as data, the exact same way the internet already sent everything else. That technology has a name you have probably heard: Voice over Internet Protocol, or VoIP. It is the direct ancestor of the phone system running in your office right now. Around this same period, another form of communication was quietly taking over packets worldwide. The first text message was sent in December 1992, a simple "Merry Christmas" typed from a computer to a mobile phone in the United Kingdom. Texting started as an afterthought feature engineers added almost as an experiment. Within a decade, it had become one of the most used communication tools on Earth. And it eventually made the same jump voice calling did, moving from carrier-controlled networks onto the open internet through business texting platforms. Then, in January of 2007, Steve Jobs walked on stage and described a new product as three things in one: a phone, a music player, and an internet communicator. That was the iPhone. Jobs argued that earlier smartphones bolted these functions together clumsily. Apple's bet was to make internet communication the actual center of the device, not a bonus feature. 3 years later, Jobs introduced FaceTime, bringing real-time video calling to a mainstream consumer device for the first time. It wasn't the first video calling technology ever built, but it was the moment that kind of communication stopped feeling futuristic and started feeling ordinary. Between VoIP moving voice onto the internet and smartphones putting internet access in everyone's pocket, a single technology stack ended up carrying phone calls, text messages, and video all at once all over the same wires and airwaves that once just moved email. This story is still being written, and North Carolina has quietly been part of it for a long time. A nonprofit called MCNC connected North Carolina State, Duke, UNC Chapel Hill, NCA&T, and UNC Charlotte on one of the country's earliest research networks back in 1985. In 1997, that same North Carolina network built the world's first gigapop, an ultra-high-speed connection point that became a model copied around the globe. And North Carolina became one of the first states connected to Internet2, the advanced research network that today links top universities nationwide. That same infrastructure carries IPv6 today, the newer addressing system built to give every device on Earth its own unique internet address. Since the old system was never designed for a world with billions of connected phones, laptops, and smart devices. North Carolina's research universities have been testing and running that next-generation addressing for years, and that same network reach across the Piedmont and the Triangle is part of what makes reliable, modern business communication possible here today. The pattern is worth noticing. From ARPANET to Usenet to Internet2, university researchers kept building the roads first, years before the rest of us knew we would need them. Every leap in how businesses and families communicate today was quietly under construction on a campus network long before it reached a phone in your pocket. From a Cold War fear about fragile phone lines, to 2 crashing letters at UCLA, to a dial-up cable between Duke and Chapel Hill, to a phone in your pocket that can see your face from anywhere on Earth, the internet's real achievement was never the technology itself. It was what the technology let people do. Talk to each other, see each other, and reach each other, faster and more reliably than any generation before us. That is the same mission we carry forward every day at Carolina Digital Phone, built right here in North Carolina, on the same spirit of connection this state has been part of since the very beginning.